Y vamos a terminar
We will conclude with a presentation of what we would call the general cost principle, which is a universal economic law, a law of tendency, like all the economic laws we must grasp. This principle indicates the volume of output entrepreneurs should reach in the spontaneous process we are describing. The idea is very simple and can also be expressed in marginal terms, in terms of 1 unit more or 1 unit less. Every year I explain this with gestures, because I believe that method is quite simple and illustrative, and it allows me to avoid using graphs and drawing curves that communicate the mistaken idea that they actually exist when they do not. We have spoken of a process which takes time. All production processes take time. They involve the passage of time, a series of successive stages in which a number of complementary factors of production are combined. When the entrepreneur acquires these factors, he incurs costs. Now, the entrepreneur can produce more units or fewer units. What level will the market reach? When should the entrepreneur move forward and produce more units? And when should he stop producing more? What I am explaining to you is, for example, in the vehicle production process at any factory, let's say the Ford factory in Almusafes, Valencia. How many vehicles should be manufactured each year? 30,000? 40,000? 100,000? A million? What point should and should not be reached? If it was an error to build the apartment, does that mean no homes at all are going to be built in Spain? Economic decisions are not all or nothing. Building homes is ruinous, and therefore nothing is built. Even now in Spain there is building going on, but it amounts to 1/3 or 1/5 of what was being built before. In economics, decisions and actions are always incremental. That is, they deal with a few units more or a few units less. Now, we are going to look at the general market law, the spontaneous law, which is driven by the force of entrepreneurship and tends to determine the maximum number of units produced in each production process. The law is very simple. Each additional unit of a productive factor the entrepreneur acquires in any line, remember the individual determinants of price, other things being equal, what happens if the demand for any good or service increases? The price tends to rise. So each additional unit of a productive factor, be it another hour of labor, another month or year of rented facilities, or another computer purchased, other things being equal, each additional unit of a productive factor which the entrepreneur buys for a production process tends to cost more, and on the aggregate level of a sector the same is true. This is called marginal cost. It is the cost of an additional unit of a productive factor acquired in a production project. So, what I am saying is that as the volume of output increases, the marginal units of the productive factors purchased will cost more and more. In more common terms, in the sphere of economic science, the marginal cost tends to rise. Of course, we already know that entrepreneurs acquire productive factors to use and recombine them in a complementary way in a production process which, after a series of stages and a period of time, eventually matures into a consumer good or service. On the side of what the entrepreneur produces in the form of consumer goods and services, each additional unit of a consumer good or service offered in the market, remember the individual determinants of price, other things being equal, what happens as the number of units for sale in the market increases? The price tends to fall. Well, the price of an additional unit the entrepreneur sells in the market once he completes his entrepreneurial project is called marginal revenue. in the sense that it is what the entrepreneur receives for each marginal or additional unit of a consumer good that he produces. So, take note, at the beginning of the cost period, each additional unit produced requires the purchase of additional or marginal units of productive factors, and thus marginal cost tends to increase. Meanwhile, as to marginal revenue from the goods sold in the market once the production process has concluded, as more units are brought to market, marginal revenue tends to decrease. So, what level or volume of output will the entrepreneur reach? Notice that if every additional unit costs me more, and what I produce brings in less and less in the form of marginal revenue, I will produce up to that volume of output at which marginal revenue roughly equals marginal cost. If I go too far, and I continue to build cars or apartments above that level, the marginal or additional units of good produced will generate a loss for me. Imagine the number of vehicles is 10,000, and up to approximately vehicle 10,000, the last vehicle, marginal revenue and marginal cost coincide. The cost to me of the additional factor to produce the last vehicle and the amount I have obtained from its sale more or less coincide. If I keep producing vehicles, if instead of 10,000 I build 10,500 or 11,000, those marginal vehicles will entail a marginal cost which exceeds the selling price, and therefore I will produce them at a loss. That said, you would understand clearly, there are no exact guides. There are no cost functions. If there were, it would be a cinch to be an entrepreneur. We would enter the data into a computer. Let's see, Santiago. How many units do we have to produce this month? He would type the data into the computer. Well, it looks like 11,524. All right, let's go produce them. We would be managers. No. The leading role in the market is always played by entrepreneurs who act in an environment of uncertainty, and who, by trial and error, with respect to their particular projects, must find out the revenue, cost and volume of output that it would be an error to exceed or to fall short of. To fall short is also an error, because if I produce less, I fail to earn what I could earn with additional units. We have to uncover this information through the entrepreneurial process of trial and error, and we must bear in mind that the data changes constantly as a result of human creativity. The proof that this is not an exact science and that it cannot be articulated lies in the fact that General Motors went bankrupt. We all know it. The company suspended payments in 2009. We can also find proof in the fact that thousands of entrepreneurs devoted themselves to building homes nobody wants in Spain. We will see that in many cases, those entrepreneurial errors, we'll see when we talk about the theory of the cycle, we'll touch on that briefly in class next week or the week after. If the essential signs entrepreneurs follow in their work as entrepreneurs are distorted, then massive investment errors result, and that is what causes the cycle, the stages of expansive bubble and crisis. It is not the fault of the market, but of the intervention of the state and central banks, the manipulation of money, interest rates and public funds, and the massive deceptive effect of all that on entrepreneurs. We will see that this is true, but it belongs to another part of economic science we have not yet reached, the theory of state interventionism, and how it blocks and distorts economic calculation, and therefore leads entrepreneurs to behave in systematically erroneous ways. In conclusion, the law of tendency is that entrepreneurs will tend to produce that volume of output up to which marginal revenue and marginal cost coincide.